Seeing Lu Sheng's strange reaction, Zhang Dan stood still, unable to speak. The two beautiful girls stared wide-eyed, their mouths agape. G5 Fi exclaimed in shock, Lu Sheng. She looked at Lu Sheng in confusion. Why is Lu Sheng reacting so strongly today? This is so strange, so different from the gentle enthusiasm from before. Fi Fi turned to glare at Xin Yuan, then quickly ran after Lu Sheng, saying, Lu Sheng, wait for me. Zhang Dan stammered, wait for me. Seeing her best friend so focused on Lu Sheng, Xin and Yuan angrily said, forget it, Dan. A person like that isn't worth your affection at all. Her eyes flashed with anger. Such a fierce reaction. I haven't even said anything, yet his response is so intense. What does that prove? It proves he has a guilty conscience. He is aware of what he just said, with no real ability, but his self-esteem is extremely high. To put it nicely, it's arrogance. To put it bluntly, it's cowardice. She tilted her head, looking at Lu Sheng with disdain. I've met many people like him. He simply isn't worthy of you. I'm sure you've noticed the girl standing next to him too. Looking at the backs of the two, Xin Yuan introduced, her name is Ji Fei Fei. You probably know the Ji family already. I've also heard she has passed the level 2 Spirit Thought Master test. In the wealthy world of Liang Chang, she is definitely considered a prominent figure. You look at the affectionate appearance of the two of them. Xin Yuan said, in my opinion, Lu Sheng is definitely relying on appearance or some tricks to win 5 feet over. To have an old man like me feels truly ashamed. Ha ha. The girls in the auditorium were amazed to see a young and handsome guy who was a level 4 Spirit Thought Master, exclaiming in astonishment. A level 4 Spirit Thought Master, oh my goodness, what? Only 18 years old, truly incredible. He hasn't even taken the competitive exam yet. Countless compliments and admiration flooded towards Lu Sheng. A remarkable and outstanding person, definitely a talent. Xin Yuan, witnessing this scene, could no longer stay upright. She fell to the floor, mouth agape in sheer astonishment, stammering, what? Him? At this moment, Zhang Dan spoke up. Xin Yuan, did you see that? It's like stepping onto the stars, a person who shines like the sun right here. That's him. Zhang Dan looked at Lu Sheng with hidden affection. This was the real Lu Sheng. When she learned that Lu Sheng was a level 4 Spirit Thought Master, Xin Yuan's mind spun as she sat on the floor, her wide, confused eyes in shock. She couldn't believe what she had heard and what her eyes had seen. After a while, feeling a bit calmer, she thought to herself, how could it be him? No, at least I have to make up for my earlier slip. Then she struggled to get up and earnestly patted her best friend on the shoulder. Dan, you have to help me. Zhang Dan replied with a sad expression. Do you see that crowd? They are all offering their business cards, but Lu Sheng acts as if he doesn't see them. Everyone in front is bending at a 90-degree angle presenting their cards, but he simply doesn't care about any of that. He rejected all of them with a wave of his hand. Powerful figures were turned away from the parking lot. Do you think you have a chance? With a gloomy expression, Zhang Dan continued, even for me, it's just unrequited feelings. He is too far away from us now. This relationship hasn't even begun, and it's already over. A while later, the young man Lu Sheng left the party and got into a taxi. Feeling that the atmosphere was less stifling now than at the party, the young man cheerfully told the driver, take me to Bai He Si. With a slight headache, Lu Sheng sighed and thought, I really don't like this kind of social interaction at all. Just showing up is for President Jiang. Lu Sheng felt satisfied. It's time to go home. Having family and martial arts companions is the life I want. It seems that I am ultimately just an ordinary high school student from a regular family. The driver drove swiftly, and soon they arrived in Bai He City, a place familiar to Lu Sheng. As soon as he got home, his mother joyfully opened the door to welcome him. Xiao Sheng, you're back. Lu Sheng's mother happily pointed and said, my dear son, come sit at the table. I'll go get some bowls and chopsticks for you. His mischievous younger sister Lu King asked with wide eyes, when did you come back, brother? His father smiled with squinted eyes, happy to say, Xiao Sheng is finally back. Later, Lu King's younger sister ran over, looking at her brother in utter astonishment, her mouth agape. Brother, how come you've grown so much after just one trip? The young man was also very humorous, posing and responding to his sister. I've only grown a little. It's because you've shrunk. Ha ha. The young man's answer left Lu King stunned, speechless. Lu Sheng looked at his sister and continued. School has been on break lately, right? In a bit, I'll test your skills. Don't forget the message I sent you before I left if you haven't improved. The young man clenched his fist, raised it, and flashed a dangerous smile. Ha ha ha. The precious herbs I gave you are not easy to digest. Lu Sheng's mother brought the young man a big bowl of steamed buns and cheerfully said, Xiao Sheng, hurry up and sit down to eat. The young man's eyes lit up at the sight of the food. Yes, Mom. He grabbed the bun and devoured it. Lu Sheng looked at his father and asked, "Dad, did you eat the meat and herbs I put in the fridge before? Do you usually eat them?" His father replied cheerfully, "Of course I eat them. By the way, what kind of nourishing herbs did you put in the fridge?" He looked at the cup of water, but seemed a bit puzzled. "I've been drinking it instead of water every day, and I feel much healthier. My body feels just like when I was 20 years old. It must be very expensive, right?" Lu Sheng had already eaten more than half of the bun and hurriedly replied, "Not expensive at all, Dad. A friend who opened a pharmacy gifted them to me. Their specialty is researching medicine for middle-aged people like you. Both you and Mom should remember to take them regularly. Don't replace them with water. I have plenty more." Of course, the father and mother had no idea that their future daughter-in-law would be the one to prepare the medicine. At that time, they would be preoccupied with taking them and would never run out. His mother, hearing Lu Sheng say that, immediately replied, all right, Xiao Sheng, you're going to take the competitive exam soon, right? You don't need to go out anymore, right?" The young man, with a cheerful expression, handed an empty bowl to his mother and replied, "I'm not going out anymore. I'm waiting at home until the competitive exam. Mom, can I have another bowl of rice?" After that, the familiar routine of fighting for food between the young man and his younger sister ensued. He kept picking up food while chewing and saying, "Give me another bowl. If your hands are slow, don't blame me." The mother said, "Just eat slowly. There's still plenty." The father chuckled. "Ha ha ha." His younger sister, Lu King, watched helplessly as her brother took all the food and shouted, "Brother, why are you stealing food from my bowl?" No matter what anyone said, the young man Lu Sheng kept eating until the bowl was empty. Then the young man exclaimed, "Just right. Today there's nothing to do. The house is a bit small. Let's finish eating and go check out the new house." The young man's words startled the other three family members, who exclaimed in unison, "What?" The young man was serious. After finishing their meal, he led the whole family to see the new house. Entering the new house, the whole family couldn't help but exclaim, "Wow, this seems a bit extravagant." Lu Sheng placed his hands on his hips, grinning as he said, "This is the new house I had someone buy. What does the family think?" The father, worried about finances, said, "The old house isn't bad. This house was really expensive, son. We can't afford it." The young man confidently replied, "It's okay. These past few months I've been participating in various activities and competitions, earning quite a bit of prize money. This is just a part of it. There's still some money that hasn't been deposited yet. A few $1,000,000 are always available to me. As for driving those heavy aircraft, Lu Sheng naturally won't mention that." Hearing the shocking amount, the mother became dizzy and exclaimed, "What? How much money? I must have heard wrong." The father looked skeptical. "Xiao Sheng, don't be joking." The sister was even more humorous when they asked, "Oh my God, brother really won that much money in the past 2 months?" Lu Sheng patted his sister's head and said, "Of course, what would I do? Rob a bank?" He continued to rub her head and said, "All right, this new house now." Unable to wait for the training ground, Lu Sheng humorously grabbed his sister's head and dragged her along, leaving her unable to resist her older brother. Lu King could only squirm. "It hurts, don't pull me." When they reached the training area, Lu King looked quite impressive, as her stats had previously far exceeded Lu Sheng's, exuding a strong aura. Lu Sheng calmly said, "Stop posing and just make your move." Hearing her brother, Lu King concentrated all of her strength in her legs and jumped high. She landed a powerful kick from above, while the young man stood there, unfazed and arrogant. As Lu King's foot approached, the young man controlled her with one hand, leaving her in a rather vulnerable position. She quickly hugged his leg, grimacing, "It hurts." Lu Sheng even went on to criticize, "Stand straight and stop being so useless. Do you even deserve to be Lu Sheng's sister like this?" Then she fell to the ground, speaking angrily, "You've got hold of my leg. How can I stand? You're a martial artist of what level already? And I'm at what level? I haven't even reached the official martial artist level." She frowned and shouted, "You only know how to bully me. I'm not useless." Only then did Lu Sheng seriously say, "Get up first. I'll teach you some techniques that I've developed myself. They're very effective." Hearing this, Lu King's tears disappeared. Her younger sister's eyes brightened as she asked, "Really? Is it the excellent skill of martial arts?" Lu Sheng looked at his sister, turned 180 degrees, and after pondering for a moment, he said, "You were just crying and had a runny nose. Now it's like I've changed to a different sister." Then the young man replied to his sister, "Just consider it the excellent skill of martial arts. From now on, do exactly as I teach you, but absolutely do not let it out." Lu King was overjoyed as if she had just found gold. She smiled with squinted eyes. "Yes, of course." The young man then guided his sister and reminded her to remember where to circulate her energy. Meanwhile, Lu King kept staring at her brother and thought, No one can level up as quickly as my brother in just a few months. She felt both curious and doubtful. If I hadn't witnessed my brother going from an ordinary high school student to the level he is today step by step over the past few months, I certainly wouldn't dare to believe it. Then the stubborn girl thought that her brother was just lucky. Although everyone felt that her brother had innate abilities, she'd always believed he must be hiding some secret. Her innate martial arts talent was definitely better than her brother's, and she felt she could grasp the secret without proof. She smiled confidently, thinking, with my intelligence like Lu King's, I will definitely surpass my brother in the future. It won't be easy. Ha ha ha. However, she didn't notice the young man looking at her with a cold gaze. Seeing his sister lost in thought and not focusing, Lu Sheng knocked her on the head. It was a loving hit, but it made Lu King exclaim, "You just made me shorter." Lu King trained so hard that she was drenched in sweat. After a while, she paused, stopped training. As soon as she let go, Lu King had to gasp for air because the workout felt like too much. Young man Lu Sheng stood with his arms crossed, watching his sister struggle to breathe with great amusement. At this point, Lu King could no longer stand and collapsed onto the ground. The young man laughed heartily and then asked, "So, how does it feel? Can you feel the effects yet?" Although Lu King was very tired when asked, her eyes sparkled and she clenched her fists. She sat up excitedly and exclaimed, "Brother, that's amazing. What is the move you taught me? The effect is really incredible. I feel like just one practice has helped me improve more than 10 times. Young man Lu Sheng thought to himself, what should I say to make my silly sister not dare to speak about this outside? After a while of deep thought, troubled by the secret that must not be revealed, the young man seemed to have a plan. With a nonchalant expression, he waved his hand and said, "It's just like what you usually practice, but it's the latest version." Lu King looked a bit surprised. What do you mean by the latest version? Young man Lu Sheng continued to explain. Just like the phone and computer you are using now, they will develop into versions 2.0 or 3.0. But in reality, in the company's laboratory, they have already researched versions 9.0, even 10.0. 2.0 is just for civilian use, a step to test the stage, and will be a long time before it is officially released to the market. So you shouldn't mention it. Lu King was startled upon hearing this, her whole being radiating with anger. What? Are you planning to treat me like a lab rat? Is he really going to harm his own sister? Seeing her overdramatic expression, Lu Sheng pinched her cheek and lifted her up gently, saying, "Such a good opportunity, even ordinary people wouldn't get a chance to be a lab rat. This body training technique just hasn't been promoted yet, but its content is essentially complete." Lu King hugged her face, looking pained and worried. "But it sounds a bit dangerous. What if I accidentally end up disabled?" Lu Sheng showed helplessness in the face of his stubborn sister's continuous worries and questions. He stood up and said, "I am your brother, born of the same father and mother, and we have quite similar physiques. I've been training for a long time. If anyone ends up disabled, it would be me first." Lu King had not stopped yet and continued to scratch her head in contemplation. "That's quite scary. If our family has two useless people, who will take care of our parents? And since you're useless first, at least I can take care of you." Hearing this from his sister, the young man Lu Sheng couldn't take it anymore. His face darkened and his eyes turned red. He quickly chased after his sister like a ticking time bomb. "Come here so I can teach you what to do." While running, Lu King cheerfully replied, "I'm just joking. Why are you so serious? Don't take it seriously, big brother." After running for a while, Lu King lay face down on the floor. She asked, "Brother, if this body training technique is that powerful, how come you have it? Could it be something illegal?" Young man Lu Sheng answered seriously, "Of course not. Your brother would never do anything illegal." Young man Lu Sheng played dirty, sitting on his stubborn sister to pin her down on the floor. Then he twisted Lu King's leg. She cried out in pain. "Then hurry and let me go. You're about to kill your own sister, while claiming you don't do anything illegal." Lu Sheng also let go because he couldn't stand his sister's thrashing and terrified screams any longer. Lu King lifted her head in confusion. "Is it possible to train this facial expression technique? Teach me, it won't cause any trouble, right?" The young man made a serious face, replying and threatening his unfortunate younger sister. "Perhaps that's the case. The person who taught me this martial art said that it must not be taught to anyone. If not only will I get in trouble, but our whole family will too." Upon hearing this, Lu King was startled and exclaimed, "What? Did you teach it to me then?" "Isn't that?" In response to her unfinished sentence, Lu Sheng expressed himself as the caring brother and said, "I had no choice but told you to be my sister." Lu Sheng's heartfelt response made Lu King blush, and she emotionally said, "Brother." Lu Sheng raised his hand and quietly said, "As long as you keep this secret, you must not let anyone find out. Otherwise, I don't think there will be any problems." Remember, no matter who it is, teacher, best friend, or future husband, they must not know. This concerns your and my lives, even that of our whole family. Upon hearing it concerns the family's safety, Lu King became very serious and understanding. Yes, yes, brother. Don't worry, I absolutely won't let anyone find out. Lu Sheng successfully tricked his foolish sister, and the young man happily stood up and said, "All right, I will teach you a few more times, and after you get used to it, make sure to practice a lot in your room, got it?" Lu King glanced at the young man and thought to herself, "So brother has been hiding in his room to practice this." Then she clenched her fists, excitedly dreaming, "Ha ha, I can do it. My talent is stronger than brother's. Surpassing him in the future is definitely possible. Ha, my acting skills should earn a Nobel Prize." Meanwhile, the young man also smugly thought, "Yeah, my acting should definitely win Best Actor." Then Lu Sheng turned around and waved at his younger sister, saying, "I need to go out for a while this afternoon, practice well at home by yourself, and when I come back, I'll teach you about real combat." Lu King obediently replied, "Okay." The scene shifted to the Hai Tian Shi Yan restaurant. Young man Lu Sheng arrived at the meeting point and said to his future wife, He Su Su, who was waiting, "I'm sorry for keeping you waiting." He Su Su was very considerate, having prepared a lot of beef dishes for him, and said, "I know you like steak, so I ordered quite a bit for you." Young man Lu Sheng exclaimed, "Oh, you are so thoughtful, thank you." Lu Sheng cut the meat while staring at his future wife, asking, "How is the company's business lately?" He Su Su replied, "The initial selling price of Linko left blood thing in the market is 49,888. This price is not necessarily too high, but it's something that an average person cannot afford. My positioning for it is to attract a customer base from the middle to high-end segment with certain economic strength. The sales situation is not bad. The first batch, 20,000 bottles of Linko left blood thang, sold out in less than a week." Money-making expert He Su Su cheerfully continued, "Moreover, the repurchase rate is very high. I believe that after a while, the reputation will be widespread. It could definitely become a star product in the herbal martial arts community of Dongning Province and Baihe City." Lu Sheng, still chewing a piece of beef, praised He Su Su. "Great job, I'm very confident leaving it to you." He added, "So about the excess money, it can be cycled for now, but we have to wait until the consumption area expands. After that, we must open branches. At that time, I will need a bank loan because I don't have much cash left." After finishing his meal, the young man continued to drink, but he also didn't forget to warm up his relationship with his future wife. "After a while, I will give you a sum of money. You don't need to worry too much about the previous amount." He Su Su took note and replied, "Then I'll rely on you." Suddenly, she asked, "By the way, aren't you about to take the competitive exam soon?" Lu Sheng, unbothered, calmly responded, "Yes, that's right. So during this time, I won't be going out anymore and will focus on preparing for the competitive exam. The entire business will depend on you." Lu Sheng suddenly remembered that he had just moved, so he reminded He Su Su, "Oh, by the way, I will be moving houses in a few days, and I will send you my new address then." Facing Lu Sheng, He Su Su was sweating because she found it extremely confusing. She thought to herself, "I forgot for a moment the boy exuding such a commanding presence in front of me is just a high school student. He hasn't even taken the competitive exam yet, and now it feels increasingly difficult to see him." She sipped her drink, thinking, "If it were me 6 months ago, I wouldn't have imagined handing over the entire fate of the He family to him. But based on the current situation, it seems that my decision is not wrong at all. Ha ha ha, of course. How could it be wrong to entrust my future to my future husband?" After pondering for a while, He Su Su stood up and said, "If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving now. Okay, goodbye." Before leaving, He Su Su suddenly remembered, "Oh right, I have promoted Ma Fei to store manager." Ma Fei was feeling very proud at this moment. "I'm doing well now, you know." Hearing this, Lu Sheng completely trusted his future wife's decision, saying, "You're in charge. That's good. Then I'm off." Lu Sheng had also finished eating by this time. Watching He Su Su's retreating figure, the young man thought, "He Su Su's company is the most important place for me to make money and where I can secretly create a prosperous future. As for whether He Su Su would betray me after becoming successful, I'm not worried at all. The He family seems calm on the surface, like a tranquil sea without waves, but in reality, there are troubles swirling around, which will eventually lead them to seek my help." Lu Sheng's expression was thoughtful. Even without external pressure, what Lu Sheng put out could certainly be taken back. The most important thing right now was to upgrade his own strength. After thinking it through, the young man called the beautiful waitress and said, "Waitress, give me 50 portions of steak to go." The young man clenched his fist with determination. Weapons for mental power create the timeless argument sword. stellar development, and the immortal golden body need to break through to the next step. With those things, next time he met that female martial arts master, Lu Sheng not only hoped to withdraw unscathed, but also to defeat her. Then, Lu Sheng thought to himself, months have passed in the blink of an eye. The revealing the star selection has ended, and the spirit thought master assessment has been passed. I will return home and confirm various rewards and external income and buy a new house for my family. Lu Sheng stood in front of the new house, pointing at it while smiling happily beside him. Then he looked at the movers in front of him, stroking his chin in confusion. With his other hand on his hip, he looked at the people from Nai Hongchuan, who were happily carrying things, and he wondered, I wonder how the people of Hongshuan Dodo got this news and came here to help me move. Below, his sister was whispering happily with Zhao Ling Quan while his parents stood there smiling. Lu Qing's gaze flicked over to Lu Sheng, narrowing her eyes as she casually covered Zhao Ling's ears and whispered something. She blushed as well, tilting her head to listen. They moved to the new house at sunset. Lu Sheng thought to himself, finally, we have finished moving to the new house. At that moment, he was playfully tapping his younger sister on the head in frustration, his face still wearing a cheerful smile. Behind them, their parents watched their children playing and smiled warmly, happily standing side by side. The little girl squinted her eyes, bent over while cradling her head, accepting her brother's irritation. In the distance, an elderly lady carrying a bag walked by and muttered as she saw them, new neighbors, a bit strange. Then he confirmed, tomorrow I will take the competitive exam. On the empty upper floor, Lu Qing stretched out her hand and excitedly stood in front of the glass door, shouting, finally, I have my own martial arts training room. Ha ha. Downstairs, his mother, holding a box of red fruit, looked at Lu Sheng's father, Lin Zhe, and smiled gently as she confirmed, we just moved here. Let's go greet the neighbors. Seeing that, he also picked up a box of gifts from the table and smiled at her, confirming all right. Upon hearing this, Lu Sheng smiled back at them and softly said, I'll go with mom and dad. Noticing this, Lindsay looked at him, seemed like he was going to say something, then laughed calmly, raising an eyebrow to decline. No need, son. You should rest. He then added, tomorrow is the day of the martial arts competitive exam, so make sure to rest well. Meanwhile, his mother, holding the gift in hand, looked over and smiled kindly in agreement with her husband. Next, he chuckled heartily, wide-eyed as he looked up at him, his hand resting on his shoulder as he commented, if you pass the martial arts exam, then our family will truly be renowned. He smiled back at him, lowering his head in silence. That night, in the new room, Lu Sheng lay in bed, drifting into sleep while quietly reflecting. My current inner strength has reached the pinnacle of a level 4 martial artist. Then, within his body, the currents of undefined energy continuously flowed. Lu Sheng noted that he was qualified to step into level 5 at any moment. He further confirmed that he could actually advance to level 5 soon, but he had always delayed it until now because he wanted to refine his inner strength. The originally light yellow inner strength had transformed into an amber color, normally circulating within his body. Next, he practiced in his mind, extending his arms to unleash a large energy punch, his face furrowing as he glared and shouted, I am almost done with the third round of refinement. Then, Lu Sheng further noted that the power would definitely increase several times over. Immediately after, his strike created a massive wave of lava flowing forward. Next, the lava reached an area covered in ice and snow. The ice blocks gradually hindered the lava, while the snow above continued to fall. Then he moved across the lava towards the region of ice and fire. On the other side, Zhao Ling Quan stood on a large ice block, weapon in hand, watching him. Her body was tossed about in the snowstorm. Lu Sheng called out to her and announced, I'm here. Hearing that, Zhao Ling Quan also silently looked at him, sharp metal glinting on her body. Immediately afterwards, the two rushed at each other, one side ice and the other side lava, clearly defining their boundaries. Lu Sheng shouted, confirming with excitement, Shall we start training together today, Senpai? Next, Zhao Ling Quan quickly thrust her weapon towards him. Lu Sheng also quickly raised his hand to block, while his other hand punched at the weapon. His face grimaced, thinking to himself, I can now exert force 20 times more with the constant energy. Then he gritted his teeth and frowned at the girl in front of him, her body constantly radiating heat. Shortly after, his fist hit Zhao Ling Quan's face, causing her to grit her teeth and bleed, her head turning to the side. She quickly regained her composure, standing on her toes to gain momentum, her ice power continuing to radiate. Next, she kicked him hard in the stomach, sending Lu Sheng flying away. On the ground, the place where Zhao Ling Quan stood was a large block of ice. Soon after, his punch was sent crashing into a building, causing an explosion. Debris and smoke flew everywhere. Immediately after, he shot out of the explosion and assessed to himself the special 4-method breathing technique. His hand condensed into a lava ball. His face twisted in concentration as he flew forward, silently concluding, Firing Breath has reached the second level of Senior Control Realm, except for creating a fireball. Then he charged like a meteor along with the energy ball in his hand powerfully from the sky towards Zhaoling Quan below. She looked up at him. Immediately, Lu Sheng shouted in his mind, realizing that the sphere could explode with a series of extremely powerful damage. At the same time, the sphere in his hand was thrust down towards Zhaoling Quan, but she quickly raised her shield to block his sphere, causing his burning energy to flow around. Next, her body sprouted ice spikes and she smiled slyly. Her hand still held up the shield, protecting her from his attack. Finally, an ice pillar formed and hurled towards him. Around them was a fierce, howling wind. Lu Sheng quickly maneuvered around the massive ice pillar. His face tightened as the snow continued to fall. Below, Zhaoling Quan kept laughing, holding her ice shield and weapon as she stood in the snowstorm. Seeing this, Lu Sheng silently concluded that it seemed like he sought out this female martial goddess every day recently for training. From a distance, he looked at her, his eyes widening with excitement as he quietly confirmed in his heart. Now he could last 5 minutes against this female martial goddess without dying. His hand had frozen, his fist clenched, and his body emanated a green light as he stood in the snowstorm. Then he further concluded in his mind, it was vastly different now. After being hit on their first encounter, the perfect martial arts had integrated into his body. Next, one hand released fiery energy to melt the ice, while his body radiated a green light and his other hand began to form small bolts of lightning. His eyes widened and his face hardened as he looked ahead in the snowstorm, reflecting in his thoughts. If all martial arts breakthroughs merged together, would the perfect martial arts advance even further? In the distance, Zhaoling Quan stood laughing, baring her teeth as she looked at him, firmly holding her weapon in hand. Meanwhile, Lu Sheng clenched his fist of lightning and launched himself towards her with a fireball. Then he paused, gathering the power around him, shrugging and frowning, staring intently at Zhaoling Quan. One hand was still emitting fire, while the other still had remnants of lightning. He stated, "All right, I can't fight you right now." Next he added, "But after the competitive exam, my authority will definitely break through to level 4. After that, he continued, by then, I will obtain the 3 major martial arts techniques of level 11. Lu Sheng thought of the glass general technique in one book and the celestial techniques in another. Finally, he imagined grasping Zhaoling Quan in the palm of his hand and declared, my strength will continue to break through. Once my internal skills reach level 5, I will certainly defeat you. Lu Sheng's expression was sinister as he looked at her with a dark smile, his eyes flashing with a green light. Then he thought to himself, the more I spar with the female martial arts master, the more I crave it. He paused and then looked at Zhaoling Quan in front of him, who was holding her shield and looking at him. He stated that martial arts master condensing ice into a spear. Next, Lu Sheng contemplated again, but he considered that he already had his own weapon. He pressed 2 fingers together, while the other 3 fingers curled down. His body emanated a purple light, and he smiled. Immediately after, he summoned the sword Timeless Argument, a series of darts connected into a chain. He shouted proudly, this is the weapon that has consumed $27 billion of mine. One hand placed behind him, the other pointing forward to control the weapons surrounding him. His gaze was calm, smiling with satisfaction. Then, Lu Sheng further explained about his weapon. The thick silver ore from Bull's Head Mountain yielded 27 kilograms of thick silver, all of which was used for this weapon. From some mountain, we mined the ore and created each segment of this weapon, which became smaller and smaller. After that, he murmured to himself, after a process, I only have a few $1,000,000 left. No wonder the Spirit Thought Master is as precious as gold. Guess I have to accept it. Lu Sheng was both controlling the weapons and forcing a smile with his eyes closed, crying inside in pain. This profession really burns money. It truly consumes money. Next, Lu Sheng withdrew his hand and placed it behind his back, watching his weapon charge forward while mumbling to himself. Fortunately, after I got this weapon, I only need to say one word. Then he shouted decisively, awesome. After that, Lu Sheng thought to himself, even if it is a spirit thought master in the martial arts 10,000 years later, it is still a top-level martial arts profession that is highly sought after. At the same time, he also raised his hand to control the weapon. His hand began to emit a green light and analyze. In the past few months, he had only casually grasped a lethal move from the level 5 martial skill of Sword Timeless Argument. Finally, he shouted in his mind, describing the material fire seed for this lethal move in just 4 words. Next, his weapon quickly flew towards Zhaoling Quan at a speed invisible to the naked eye. Lu Sheng shouted in his heart, analyzing, I can cut through the Grandmaster. She, on her part, was alertly watching his weapon. Lu Sheng thought, if a level 5 can kill a Grandmaster, that level 6 or even level 7, Then he puzzledly asked himself, what fighting technique of spirit thought master is stronger than sword timeless argument? His eyes narrowed, he smacked his lips, looked ahead, and commented on Zhaoling Quan. This female martial goddess's fighting was truly too strong, fundamentally incomparable to an ordinary grandmaster. On the other side, she raised her weapon and channeled power into it, causing it to emit sharp spikes. The shield in her hand quickly blocked all of his weapon's attacks, and he still couldn't strike within a 3-foot range. Seeing this, Lu Sheng on the other side gritted his teeth in anger, his face darkening. He stretched out his hand, manipulating the weapons while shouting in his heart, "Damn it." His weapons all bounced back and embedded themselves into the ground. Shortly after, he lifted one of them up, his expression filled with confusion, frowning and breaking out in a cold sweat as he realized in shock that the normal technique of sword timeless argument was completely ineffective against her. Then he fell into contemplation. If I unleash my full power with sword timeless argument immediately after, Lu Sheng further concluded, once the lethal move is unleashed, I will be immobilized. Meanwhile, the weapon will quickly stab into Zhaoling Quan's arm, forcing her to drop her shield. The large source of energy clashed. Lu Sheng added, although it could inflict serious damage on the warrior goddess, my mental energy would be completely depleted, rendering me useless. Right after that, the goddess's spear rushed toward him. Lu Sheng, having no strength left to resist, weakly frowned and struggled to swing his fist. In a panic, he confirmed, the next moment, I would definitely be finished off by the warrior goddess. Finally, he stated, currently, my breath of wind is delaying the immortal golden body. In terms of speed, I am not at all inferior to her. As Lu Sheng escaped from the battle, he glanced back at Zhaoling Quan dealing with his weapons on the ice block and remarked, as long as she doesn't recklessly rush to her death, she won't be able to do anything to me. Next, he further concluded, it's a pity there's no suitable opponent to test my skills. The warrior goddess is too strong. I can't try any techniques. If I stubbornly push forward, she will inevitably get injured, and I will be dead. Ultimately, he confirmed, without a worthy competitor, one can never know their own strength or their limits. Returning to reality, Lu Sheng just woke up sitting on the bed, resting his hand on his knee. The other hand leaned back as he shouted internally, the competitive exam tomorrow is the best testing opportunity. In the dark night, he silently stared into the void, then murmured to himself, top martial artist of the district, top martial artist of the province. Lu Sheng interrupted. The house was enveloped in darkness. He shouted with certainty, my goal. He looked into the endless galaxy in his thoughts and finally smiled, his sharp gaze full of determination. Outside the door, dawn was gradually emerging, illuminating his body. Lu Sheng affirmed, not just stopping there, then I will showcase my major skills. Nothing is a top secret. The diagram of his body along with his skills and abilities was made public. The glass light reward technique was in a passive state to hone and level up his mental energy as a set of techniques in his mind. Next were his eyes, bright blue like a hawk. Lu Sheng's eyes would utilize electric sight when necessary. Following that were the cells in his body that continuously refined physical techniques. The solar cells allowed energy supply for the continuous refining described in the scriptures, which were merely for reference. The Grandmaster reserved the right for final interpretation. Finally, his legs crushed the ground. The immortal golden body could regenerate wounds, possess extraordinary defenses, and operate normally under several times the gravitational force. A perfect body, yet still unable to become an ultimate cosmic being. Next are 4 innate attributes of him. The method of natural respiration, based on various situations, allows for the exchange of different functionalities. Please comment on the least used element. Next is the fire fist in the arm of the Divine Illumination King Sutra, utilizing lost information to create a second body within the main body, thereby unleashing double the force. Then comes his second body. The technique 10 suns shine at the same time, inherited from the master, is the life's work of Dong Jake Si Yang, a powerful killing move. Finally are the senses through both the eyes and body of Lu Sheng. The timing and senses are extremely sensitive. After enhancing his mental strength, he can synchronize reaction speeds in high-speed combat. The next morning at the dining table, Lu Sheng's mother, wearing an apron, stood by with her eyes closed and hands clasped, mumbling a prayer. May there be peace and smoothness, and I hope my Xiao Sheng will achieve good results. On the table were steamed buns and breakfast pastries. Meanwhile, Lu King was sitting at the table, placing her hands down and looking at her brother, who was sitting beside her, suggesting, brother, later I will go with you to the exam. Hearing this, he smiled while eating the bun in his hand, patting his little sibling's head and responding, sure, let you feel the atmosphere of the competitive exam to avoid tension for your upcoming competitive exam. The little girl, biting into her bun, frowned back at him with dissatisfaction, mumbling, ha, I can't do that. Beside him, their mother saw this and clenched her hands tightly, smiling excitedly as she encouraged her son. Don't be nervous, stay calm during the exam. No matter what the result is, you will always be our proudest son. Shortly after, there was the sound of a car approaching from outside, and Lindsay called out to his son from outside the car, "Son, get in the car." Seeing this, Lu Sheng turned and waved back at him through the glass, eyes wide as he replied, "Coming right away." Next to him, Lu King was chewing and glancing over. In her hand was a bowl of breakfast. On the way, the wheels kept rolling along the road. Lindsay reminded his son, "Do well on the exam, son. Whether the Lu family can produce a top scholar depends entirely on you." Hearing this, Lu King, sitting in the back, looked up in discontent, grabbing the driver's seat and squinting her eyes as she shouted in reminder, "Dad, I'm still here too." Seeing this, he closed his eyes and smiled. Meanwhile, Lindsay was driving and laughing with his eyes squinting, making a comment about his daughter. This girl still has to work hard if she wants to achieve the highest honor. Ha ha ha. The sky was clear that day, and at the bustling exam location, cars were densely packed. Lu Sheng quickly opened the door and stepped out of the car, his face full of confidence. Then he closed his eyes, his body emitting a purple light as he envisioned the support of his family. "Mom's good boy. Try your best to the exam, don't be too nervous, and give it your all. Getting into a key martial arts school would be a proud achievement. Do you want some water? Are you hungry? Or do you need to use the restroom? Do you bring your examination ID? Oh my, how could this child forget something so important at home?" "Taxi, taxi." They shouted in a mix of worry and excitement, even more than he was. Then Lu Sheng tucked all of those words into his heart and opened his eyes, looking ahead with a determined gaze, frowning slightly as he smiled to himself internally. "It's been a long time since I returned to the life of a normal person. Now it finally feels like I am just a regular person participating in a competitive exam. What I've experienced over the past few months truly has been..." He paused. Suddenly, his father stepped out from behind him, frowning as he looked ahead, then smiled and recounted. "I remember the first time I was here for the martial arts exam too, but unfortunately, I didn't have the talent and my nutrition wasn't good either. I had to stop after a while." Lu Sheng sank into thought at his father's words and looked forward. Just returned the result, no explanation needed, nothing else. After that, Lindsay quickly walked over and put his arm around his son, smiling joyfully and saying, "Son, you are 100 times stronger than your father. I will say much more, just one thing to remind you." He interrupted himself, his other hand resting on his hip. Lu Sheng also looked at him seriously as he stood beside him, smiling faintly. Lindsay continued to add, "Do your best, he is your uncle." Seeing this, Lu Sheng's eyes welled up as he looked at his father, his mouth agape in slight surprise. Soon after, he regained his composure, closed his eyes, smiled, and said, "Father, I understand." Lindsay behind him also smiled particularly happily, looking at his son. Lu King quickly appeared beside them, gripping his hand tightly as he watched his brother and called out to encourage him. "Brother, you can do it. Dad and I will be waiting for you outside." Lu Sheng still calmly walked while waving goodbye to them behind. Next, the long-awaited annual martial arts examination finally began. In the auditorium, the crowd lined up neatly. The judge of the competition held the documents in his hand, looking down at the crowd and saying, "There is no need for an announcement. Enter the competition in order. First is the blood key measurement. Second is the combat power index measurement." He paused, then added, "Order 00236 to 00240. Now please proceed to the examination room." Next to him was another judge. Immediately after that, those whose numbers were called quickly entered the examination room, under strict surveillance and direction from the proctor. Suddenly, a flash of light appeared. The examiner widened his eyes, frowned, and glanced down, letting out a snort. Then, seeing the crowd all avoiding Lu Sheng, he angrily shouted, "What are you all doing?" Yet he stood in the middle, exuding a killing intent while putting his hands in his pockets, completely calm. The examiner continued, "Why are the people in front and behind crowding together like that? What's the point of leaving such a large gap in the middle?" He then urged again, "Stand in line properly." One person in the crowd, trembling, pointed at Lu Sheng, looking terrified, and replied, "Examiner, it's not that I don't want to move forward. It's just that when I got close to him, I felt an unusual tension and my whole body started shaking. I can't handle it." Hearing this, the examiner frowned, clenched his fists, and angrily stepped down, shouting, "What the hell?" Then the person stood upright in front of Lu Sheng, glaring wide-eyed, frowning, and letting out a snort. Meanwhile, he remained calm, his face dark, his lips showing no emotion, and his whole body still radiating killing intent. Immediately, the examiner sensed it. Startled, his body stiffened, and he shouted in his mind with some anxiety, "The oppressive aura is terrifying." Next, the judge's face was filled with struggle, furrowing his brows and glaring at Lu Sheng, fearfully stating, "This is the blood T value of a martial artist. Once it becomes concentrated to a certain level, it naturally releases a kind of aura like this. Moreover, the killing intent is still constantly attacking him unconsciously." Behind Lu Sheng, an invisible beast appeared, fierce and blood-red, gazing at the crowd. The judge, terrified, retreated and thought to himself, normal people just getting close would feel like standing next to a ferocious beast. Meanwhile, Lu Sheng remained composed, his hands in his pockets, looking at the judge without a ripple of expression. The judge further concluded, "This is an instinctive protective mechanism. The human body instinctively wants to avoid danger." The judge stared wide-eyed, looking astonished as he mumbled to himself, "What is he? How can he?" Then, trembling and bewildered, he shouted, "What kind of monster is he?" At this moment, Lu Sheng's expression was calm, yet he looked at the judge like a fierce beast, his eyes shining brightly, exuding an oppressive aura. Finally, the judge cleared his throat, closed his eyes, frowned, and regained his composure. He pointed to the open door behind him and confirmed, "I have no choice. You, Lu Sheng, please enter the examination room first, measure your blood key, then bring along others to follow behind you." Upon hearing this, the crowd quickly dispersed, each person filled with astonishment as they hurried away. Eventually, no one was left around Lu Sheng except for the judge. Everyone ran while looking back at Lu Sheng and concluded, "This is too terrifying. Stay away from Lu Sheng. Finally, we can avoid him." Immediately after that, Lu Sheng also closed his eyes with Aku Xiao, bowed his head, and sighed to confirm, "All right." Meanwhile, the crowd behind had long stepped aside to watch him discuss. Then, with an imposing demeanor, he put his hands in his pockets and walked in. A desperate voice rang out, "I didn't take any banned substances, I didn't." That person kept struggling and justifying, saying, "I didn't." Seeing this, Lu Sheng looked up at him, his face filled with curiosity and speechlessness. Next, the guy shouted again in defense, "I only had a bit of chicken soup that my uncle made according to traditional medicine." Afterwards, he was pulled away by two others, but still unwilling, he shut his eyes and shouted in defense, "My uncle said it would help me in the competition." From behind, another judge stood with his arms crossed, looking on skeptically. Then the bespectacled person behind him also crossed his arms and sneered while reminding, "I warned you at the beginning." The guy added, "If you've eaten anything you shouldn't have in the last 2 days, quickly confess." Afterwards, the judge's face clearly displayed the words, "No cheating allowed." Then that person made a decision. "There's no other way. I will disqualify you from the competitive exam for 3 years. You can leave." The guy was being squeezed by two others, being dragged out the door, still struggling and shouting in defense, "I didn't cheat. I won't accept this. I won't accept this." Lu Sheng just watched his figure leave. Right after that, a middle-aged man also closed his eyes, bowed his head, and sighed, saying, These contestants don't know how to keep themselves in check at all. The rule states 3 years, but in reality, they won't be able to compete for a lifetime." He then added, "No martial arts university would recruit students who have cheated." Nearby, a man wearing glasses crossed his arms, closed his eyes, and nodded in agreement. Shortly after, he held the document in his hand, pointed at Lu Sheng, and shouted, "Next up is Lu Sheng. He seems lost in thought as he looks at them." Then he urged, "It's you, right? Come over here quickly." Seeing this, Lu Sheng quickly walked over to them, his expression showing little with his hands in his pockets. An overwhelming aura descended quickly, causing the two men to freeze. Immediately, the man in glasses widened his eyes in shock. The other middle-aged man was no exception, staring in astonishment. Soon after, their bodies involuntarily trembled as Lu Sheng approached. Their bodies stiffened, mouths agape as they mumbled, "This aura is overwhelming." Next, they made a comment, "We are 5th-level judges, yet we are unaware," and stepped back. Inside the assessment room, the man in glasses, still in disbelief, picked up a syringe, his eyes wide as he looked at Lu Sheng and spoke, "Are you ready? We will start with the test." Right after that, Lu Sheng picked up the syringe, pinched the needle lightly with 2 fingers, pausing it to bend, and calmly remarked, "I have completed my body training. I can exchange the needle for a different blood. This needle won't penetrate my skin." Hearing this, the 2 others were even more astonished, confused, widened their eyes, frowned, and shouted, "What the hell? What's going on?" Seeing this, the bespectacled man quickly frowned, took out a bunch of sharp needles, and shouted, "I have taken a bunch of needles to draw blood from high-level martial artists." Next to him, the middle-aged man also awkwardly approached, holding the syringe, beads of sweat forming on his face. Seeing this, Lu Sheng shrugged and walked over, holding a handful of syringes, and glanced at them, calmly stating, "Drawing one by one takes too much time." The 2 men were a bit startled and let go. Immediately after, Lu Sheng raised his palm and smashed it onto the sharp end of the pile of syringes he was holding and then confirmed, "Let's do it all at once." Right after that, they looked at the crumpled syringes, reshaped and battered as if they were grass in his hands, and looked up at Lu Sheng with faces full of panic. They then looked down at the pile of syringes and screamed in fear. This is really eerie. How thick is his skin? The bespectacled man next to him also trembled and confirmed. We're out of options. I will go seek instructions from the higher-ups. Then he frowned, forcing a smile, pointed toward the door in front of him, and looked at Lu Sheng to confirm. Student, you should go check your combat power index first. Seeing this, Lu Sheng obediently looked in the direction the bespectacled judge was pointing, finally smiled with excitement, and confirmed. Okay. Lu Sheng strode confidently towards that door. In the combat power assessment room, a guy with shoulder-length orange hair widened his blue eyes and shouted while swinging his fist. Aha! He then punched toward the dummy in front of him and yelled, Die for me. The moment his fist made contact, a blue light flashed. Shortly after, the scarecrow looked at him and announced, Breakthrough combat power of over 100, there's hope for passing the Dongning martial arts exam. Hearing this, the other guy glanced in disbelief as if unable to believe what he had just heard. Next, the glasses-wearing examiner quickly led Lu Sheng into the room. The person in charge inside, while holding documents and looking at them, let out a sound of surprise. He then stared in amazement at the glasses-wearing examiner and asked, Mr. Zhang, why are you here? Seeing Mr. Zhang's grim expression, he confirmed, the blood gas index for the next person hasn't come out yet. Then Mr. Zhang quickly approached, covered his ears, and whispered something into the person in charge's ear, causing him to look astonished and shout, What? Is there such a thing? Then Mr. Zhang looked at the dummy equipped with devices and reminded, How is your machine? Do you need to switch to a more advanced one? Don't let there be a disgraceful incident. You can't lose face in front of this person. Hearing this, the person in charge remained confident, stretched out his hand, smiled at his measuring device, and confirmed, Egg, don't worry. This machine is the highest quality one. Next, the person added that the limit of this testing machine is 990,000. He confidently looked at his test dummy number 04 and said, A level 6 martial artist wouldn't be an issue. Immediately after, he made another ridiculous remark. Don't tell me that kid is a master. Ha ha ha. As soon as the guy with glasses stepped aside, the person in charge of this round casually looked towards Lu Sheng, waved his hand, and cheerfully asked, That student is named Lu Sheng, right? Then he announced, Come on in, it's your turn. Lu Sheng quickly approached calmly, but the killing aura around him startled the man with glasses, causing him to turn. The judge for this round was wide-eyed in surprise, unable to sit still in his chair as his sharp gaze met Lu Sheng's from above, the killing intent continuously emanating from him, making the other man awkwardly lower his feet and look up. Then Lu Sheng smiled, closed his eyes peacefully, and bowed to the judge. Hello, judge. My contestant number is 00565 from Baihe City, Lu Sheng. Seeing Lu Sheng, the judge was taken aback, trembling as he pointed and stammered. Ha ha! Then he confirmed in fear, Student Lu Sheng, please step up to the testing machine. Next, he stood in position in front of the measurement dummy while the two judges, one standing and one sitting, looked at him. Next, the examiner, sitting with an information sheet in hand, stared wide-eyed at him and asked, Student Lu Sheng, are you ready? Hearing this, Lu Sheng also closed his eyes and replied, Please wait a moment. Immediately, the examiner's face changed color, his eyes widened. Looking towards Lu Sheng's flame, Lu Sheng was using the breath of the Divine Illumination King Sutra to enhance the blood vitality. Next, he pushed his hands upward as if channeling energy, and the shadow of a fire deity flickered behind him. His expression was serious, and his body emitted a golden energy, overwhelming. Seeing this, the other two immediately shielded themselves in shock. The examiner in this round held onto his hat, his eyes wide with astonishment, mouth agape as he looked at Lu Sheng and shouted, What? What's going on? You told me this was a student coming to take the competitive exam, right? He confirmed with Mr. Zhang, who was frowning, struggling to look ahead. Then he looked at the golden aura surrounding Lu Sheng and stated, Condensing power, erupting at a fixed point, understanding weaknesses. Lu Sheng remained calm, eyes closed, regulating his energy. The examiner made the observation, Nothing is unknowable, nothing is impossible. Then Lu Sheng opened his eyes wide, gleaming with a golden light, and yelled in his mind, Martial Dao completeness. Shortly after, he confirmed the first form. Next, he stood on his toes, the ground cracking under immense energy, then shouted in his heart, Stellar development power 12 times. Following this, the examiner in this round quickly stared in amazement, sweating profusely, his mouth unable to close. Lu Sheng swung his fist, and a fireball containing a phoenix quickly formed. His eyes flashed as he shouted the name of his master technique. Intense flames radiated around him. Next, Lu Sheng reflected in his thoughts that this was the first time he had fully merged all states into one. Then, Lu Sheng added, I also want to know my current strength. Then Lu Sheng smiled faintly, squinting his eyes, resolutely raised his fist forward, and shouted in his heart, what will happen in the end? Immediately after, Lu Sheng's fiery punch struck the body of the assessment mannequin. Next, a brilliant light emerged, and he shouted the name of the technique 10 suns shine at the same time. Earlier, 5 minutes before the competitive exam in a certain room, the sound of chess pieces hitting the table came down powerfully. Miao Dong closed his eyes and pulled his hands back, sitting calmly in his chair while confirming, checkmate. Director Lu, he is Miao Dong, the chief supervisor of the college entrance exam for Baihe City and the president of the Martial Artists Association in Shuhai City. Hearing this, the overweight man playing chess beside him rubbed his head and sighed, eyes closed. I've lost again. He is the director of the Department of Education for Baihe City. Then Director Lu complimented further. President Miao's chess skills are indeed superb. I have lost 7 games in a row. I've finally decided not to play anymore. Hearing this, Miao Dong on the other side also laughed loudly, raised his hand to rub his chin happily, and modestly squinting his eyes as he said, Ha ha, I'm just an ordinary person. I don't know anything about tactics. I have to accept it. Suddenly, from the door, the secretary burst in, holding documents with a look of panic, shouting, Chairman Miao, there is something important that needs your directive. Hearing this, Miao Dong turned to look at her, calmly reminding her, What are you so flustered about? Don't you see I'm entertaining guests? Beside him, Director Lu also quietly sat and observed. Then he spoke up to ask, What is it? Go ahead. Upon hearing this, the secretary, still holding the document, stammered, It's very hard to describe after that. She hesitantly described broadly. There is a contestant from Baihe City coming to compete, but they broke the blood collection needle. Then the judges wanted to request something additional, so the judges want to use a higher quality blood collection needle for him. Hearing this, Miao Dong rubbed his temples, closed his eyes, and lowered his head in annoyance, questioning, Isn't there a box of high-quality needles provided at every testing location? Then he added, Does this little issue really require my directive? Hearing this, the secretary approached, looking very flustered, stammering. She added. They're all broken. All the high-quality needles are broken. Upon hearing this, Miao Dong gripped the chess piece tightly, causing it to crack under the pressure, full of agitation. He looked over with wide eyes in disbelief, then furrowed his brow and shouted back, What? The high-quality needles are all broken. Then he questioned, Is that really true? Director Lu, upon hearing this, was also taken aback, unable to sit still as he looked toward the secretary. Soon after, Miao Dong lost his composure, quickly pointing at the flustered secretary and urgently commanding, Hurry up! You go fetch the special-grade needles from the management room. Next, he added, And bring me the information on that candidate as well. Liu Pingnan beside him was also shocked and stood up to take a look. The secretary, hearing this, brought forth the documents in her hand and confirmed, I have prepared the materials. Please take a look. Immediately after, the two leaned in to look at the files in her hand, their eyes wide open in astonishment. Then Miao Dong closed his eyes and furrowed his brow, his face darkening as he breathed heavily. After that, he quickly smiled at his friend and confirmed, Director Lu, congratulations. Hearing this, Director Lu beside him also smiled, closing his eyes modestly as he confirmed, lucky, lucky. Immediately after, he clasped his hands together and happily added, This time it's my turn to accept. All thanks to President Miao's excellent guidance, I'm getting a bit of fame this time too. Hearing this, Miao Dong was a bit surprised and looked over at him, still holding the documents in his hand, and asked back, Oh, Director Liu seems to be not surprised at all, right? Hearing this, Director Liu smiled broadly and cheerfully stated, how could I not be surprised? He then confirmed, but deep down, I knew a little bit. Right after that, he recalled the emblem of the Eastern Military Region shining brightly and asked Miao Dong, Chairman Miao, are you aware of the annual revealing the star selection of the Eastern Military Region? Then he added, The guy named Lu Sheng is the revealing the star of this round. He continued, Besides that, he interrupted himself, then still smiling broadly, confirmed further, he is also a famous martial arts star in Baihe City. Hearing this, Miao Dong's eyes widened in shock as he exclaimed, So that's how it is. Immediately afterward, he felt a surge of emotions within him and stated his thoughts about the kid. This level of strength is not only enough to qualify for the provincial martial arts champion. Then he firmly confirmed in his mind, but fundamentally, he is firmly seated on the throne of the champion that no one can replace. Seeing this, Miao Dong excitedly grabbed the hand of Director Liu next to him and exclaimed, "Let's go, we need to see this person. It would be a pity not to meet this international talent at least once." He sighed. Soon after, the table and the vase on it shook violently. Finally, with a strong impact, the vase quickly cracked. Mao Dong and Liu Pingnan both turned pale, startled, and shaken as well. Next, the two of them couldn't stand firm, looking down at the violently shaking ground and screaming in panic. "What? Ah!" As the tremor subsided, Director Liu behind them was also wide-eyed and shocked, sweating, and asked, "What? An earthquake?" Beside him, Miao Dong glanced towards the source of the tremor and urgently stated, "It doesn't seem like it. I can sense the cause of the shaking not far away." Immediately after, his eyes widened in fear as he shouted, "That direction is," he added, "the combat training exam room." Below, just after Lu Sheng's punch had turned the scene into a cloud of dust, he still had his fist raised, surrounded by brilliant red phoenix gems. The energy measurement dummy was also heavily damaged, sticking to the wall, along with cracks on the surface of the ground. Next to him, the two judges looked on in astonishment, falling off their chairs. The judge, wearing glasses, stared wide-eyed, frozen, unable to close his mouth, and shouted. In the room next to the other judge, this person had also collapsed to the ground, mouth agape, shouting in astonishment. What on earth happened? Holy shit! The machine was still moving, firmly stuck to the wall behind, its body still electrified and heavily damaged. The judge screamed in alarm. The Lytic combat power testing machine is a 6th level martial artist. Then he asked again in shock. Blown up with just one hit? Seeing this, Lu Sheng looked innocent, his mouth open in disbelief. His hand was still tightly gripping the blazing fist, surrounded by several phoenix gems. The other judge confirmed, one punch from him. In the end, he still couldn't believe his eyes and shouted again, surpassing a combat power of 990,000. Behind him, Miao Dong and Director Liu quickly rushed to the scene. He stared wide-eyed and shouted in astonishment. Hey, what happened here? The crowd looked over at him. The scene was chaotic, with smoke and dust swirling everywhere. The judge quickly ran over, hugged Miao Dong, and cried helplessly, shouting, Director Miao, you finally made it. Next to him, Director Liu also looked on with a darkened face, mouth agape. Miao Dong glanced back at the other person, tears and snot streaming down his face. The judge quickly stammered a denunciation of Lu Sheng. He is. Then he interrupted himself, pointing at Lu Sheng's silly, harmless, and dark-faced as he walked over, adding, he is the master. Hearing this, Lu Sheng pointed at his face, widened his eyes, and pursed his lips, full of confusion. Immediately afterward, he regained his composure, pointed at the people around him, and furrowed his brows as he instructed. The other contestants should go outside first. Tell the contestant out there to wait a moment. Next, he shouted urgently, quickly go to the Martial Arts Association and arrange to bring a master-level testing machine here. Hurry up! Mr. Zhang, wearing glasses, also frowned in panic. Together with the judge in a blue outfit, they both confirmed clearly before leaving. Soon after, Miao Dong turned to look at Lu Sheng, his round face twisted in surprise. In his heart, he silently concluded, the power of that punch just now was indeed earth-shattering. He added, today is likely to become a legend. Finally, he concluded to himself, truly a young hero. Behind him, Director Liu slowly approached Lu Sheng, his eyes squinting with a smile as he assured, don't worry, student Lu Sheng, no one will blame you. He added, make sure you don't carry any psychological burden. Seeing this, Lu Sheng glanced back at him. Director Liu stood beside him, hands clasped behind his back, further confirming, just prepare well. Later, you can coordinate with us to check again. Then he looked at Lu Sheng. The dense blue energy continuously radiated from him. His hand clenched, his gaze probing. Not understanding the situation, he looked around and made a mental note. Just being close allows one to feel the aura of a martial artist who has been home many times. He confirmed in astonishment. If it weren't for seeing it with my own eyes, who'd believe that there is a student only 18 years old like this? An hour later, Zhang's voice echoed with urgency as he pointed towards the box that had been brought in. Chief Miao, had all the advanced machines arrived? He was holding another piece of paper in his hand. Hearing this, Miao Dong quickly confirmed and prepared to check. Soon after, he pulled out a golden needle, his face full of joy as he smiled and confirmed to him. First, let's measure the kiwi and blood. Immediately, the golden needle was quickly inserted into the tip of his finger. Lu Sheng also bowed his head to observe his actions and silently extended his hand to comply. Shortly after, a small amount of golden orange blood from Lu Sheng was drawn out. Seeing this, Director Lu pointed at the droplet of Lu Sheng's blood being pulled onto the needle. Astonished, wide-eyed, and sweating, he exclaimed in confusion. The blood is condensed instead of dispersing. It's thick like mercury. Master's blood, he further commented, no, it's still lacking a bit. I've seen true Master's blood before. The imagined blood pearls in their minds glowed a vibrant orange-red full of vitality. Soon after, Miao Dong retracted the needle and frowned at it, confirming, blood that falls to the ground will form into round droplets. Whether in viscosity or coagulation, it will be slightly higher than this. Beside him, Director Liu also frowned and placed his hand on his hip to add his own observation. But at his age, this was already incredibly frightening. Right after that, he placed the syringe down on the machine on the table. The machine emitted a beep and then began to operate. Finally, it provided the conclusion. Blood and T value 123356, martial artist level 6 displayed on the red announcement board. Seeing this, Miao Dong exclaimed in astonishment. Blood and Chi value over 1200, martial artist level 6. Beside him, Section Chief Liu, holding his head, looked wide-eyed at the announcement board in front of him, trembling as he said, the entire Bai he see. He stuttered for a moment before confirming. No, even in the history of the competitive exam in the Dongning province, such results have never been seen. On the other side, Miao Dong quickly looked towards Lu Sheng, smiling excitedly and praising. Well done. Very good. Student Lu, you have set a new record for your blood and chi index. Lu Sheng quietly looked at him, raised an eyebrow, and modestly replied, not bad. Lu Sheng's expression was calm. However, his eyes narrowed slightly, showing some confusion as he looked at them. The glasses-wearing examiner beside him pouted in dissatisfaction. Internally, he shouted, is this what you call not bad? Unable to contain himself, he cursed inwardly. Damn it, truly a monster. I can't take it anymore. Immediately after, the glasses-wearing person, holding the control panel, turned around and shouted to announce, Chief Miao, the testing machine has been adjusted. Next to it is the armored mannequin. Hearing this, he quickly turned to Lu Sheng with a frown, smiling as he confirmed further. While it's still heated, let's quickly check the combat power index. On the other side, a dummy was prepared specifically for Lu Sheng. His hand waved as he expressed his thoughts out loud. The master-level combat power testing machine was almost completely new, as very few people in Bai He City could use it. Then he looked at Lu Sheng and added that today, a young person like him was using it. Lu Sheng quickly walked seriously toward the armored dummy and looked at it, clenching his fist tightly. Immediately after, Lu Sheng swung his arm to unleash a blow, his face contorting as a tremendous force began to build up in his arm. Then, the screen rapidly displayed a series of notifications. Finally, he delivered a powerful punch accompanied by smoke and shouted the name of his skill 20 times louder. Stellar development, 10 suns shine at the same time. The dust around him began to shoot out, and the people nearby quickly raised their hands to shield their faces. Next, Miao Dong shouted in amazement, the will of a master. This is definitely the will of a master. Eyes wide open, he shouted again. I have diligently pursued this for many years, and now it appears in an 18-year-old. He then confirmed further. Who wouldn't feel shocked? Next to him, Director Liu frowned, his eyes wide as he looked at Lu Sheng in confusion and shouted. This clearly indicates that the path to a 7th-level master has been completely opened. Finally, he commented, after a while, he will truly be a young master. Right after that, his hand detached from the body of the effigy, leaving a deep indentation on it that was still emitting flames. Lu Sheng withdrew his hand, smiled, and squinted at the effigy in front of him. The effigy's body was still glowing, surrounded by a thick cloud of dust. The effigy emitted the combat power index, 1,260,000. Seeing this, Director Liu happily laughed, his eyes sparkling, and then commented, the basic combat power has also met the target. Although it's still a bit lacking, it is worthy of the title of master. Next to him, Miao Dong sensed something was off. He squinted at Lu Sheng, raised his hand to touch his chin, and murmured, how strange. Then he shouted, that's not right at all. After that, he looked at Lu Sheng and questioned, Lu Sheng, you have the strength of a master, so why aren't you using the aura of power? Hearing this, Lu Sheng calmly looked at him, squinting again. Director Liu quickly approached Lu Sheng, furrowing his brows and asking in a somewhat panicked manner, yes, where is your aura of power? Lu Sheng continued to look at him, remaining silent for a moment. Finally, he extended his hand to gather energy, his whole body emitting a faint golden light, and with a completely nonchalant frown, he confirmed, I'm not at level 5 yet. The aura of power has not formed. Hearing that, the two people were left stunned. Their faces were filled with astonishment, eyes bulging as they stared at Lu Sheng, and they shouted in unison, unable to believe, What? They involuntarily stepped back, their gazes fixed on the aura emanating from Lu Sheng. Director Lu shouted in shock, "Oh my god, he hasn't even reached level 5 yet, and he's already displaying the combat power of a master." Upon hearing this, Miao Dong next to him regained his composure. He winked at Director Lu, happily saying, "Director Lu, congratulations." Then he added, "It seems that Bai He City will soon have a great master. This is a dragon appearing in the world." Hearing this, Director Liu clenched his fists, squinted his eyes, and shouted excitedly, "Divine Dragon! Divine Dragon! Ha ha!" On the other side, Miao Dong rubbed his chin, smiling with narrowed eyes. The other person cheered. "Our Bai He City is about to have a dragon in the sky." Immediately after, Director Liu quickly turned around, pointing to remind Zhang of the spectacled judge. "Hurry up, notify President Xiao and the Eastern Military Region." He fumbled, holding the documents, confirming while running. After that, Lu Sheng stepped out of the testing area. He reached out towards his family, smiling and calling, "Dad." The backlight made his blue eyes sparkle. Lin Ze, full of excitement, widened his eyes, furrowing his brows as he looked at Lu Sheng, asking, "Xiao Sheng, how did you do? Did you perform to your full potential?" Next to him, Lu King was also thrilled, wide-eyed, clenching his fists in excitement, urging, "Brother, hurry up and tell us." Immediately after that, Lu Sheng placed his hands on his hips, looked towards his younger sister, and confirmed, "Better than I expected. If I go to the capital, I'm sure there won't be any problems." Lin Ze next to him quickly smiled with closed eyes, proudly placing his hand on Lu Sheng's shoulder. Meanwhile, Lu King, standing nearby, clenched her fist and raised it excitedly, shouting in joy, "So what you mean is you can become the top scholar." "Ha ha, I have a top scholar brother." Soon after, the three quickly took a photo together to commemorate the university entrance exam. Lin Ze stood behind, laughing happily. Lu Sheng's younger sister was beside him, holding the picture and looking at it with a bright smile. Lu Sheng in the middle couldn't hide his joy either. Next, Lu Sheng's personal stats appeared. Full name, Lu Sheng. Gender, male. Lifespan of martial arts, June 297. Martial arts level 4, 477. Martial arts strength, level 8 martial artist. His life recorded remarkable milestones. At 18, he became a level 2 martial artist, shaking the city of Bai He. He was then nominated by the Bai He City Association to participate in the Dongning Province Talented Training Camp, finishing first. That same year, he participated in the Revealing the Star selection, earning the title of Revealing the Star. Also that year, he took the competitive exam, achieving the best results nationwide, and was admitted to the 7th Sacred Martial University in the capital. After 2 years, he joined a military district and was promoted to the rank of major. Lu Sheng was stroking his chin while looking at the red notice board in front of him, frowning and stating, at 30 years old, he became a master. At 54, he became a grandmaster. At 60, he became one of the 4 great generals of the Eastern Military District, a lifetime of military service renowned for his battle achievements. Died in April 477, living to the age of 181. Historical character evaluation, 4.5 stars. Resource area limit, fire seed level 4. Then he forced a smile, recalling his 5 wives, frowning in reluctance and sighing. 5 wives. Haze, I really don't want that at all. On the screen, a heart appeared quickly with the number 5. Shortly after, Lu Sheng excitedly clenched his fist, his brow furrowed with determination. The power in his hand surged, and Lu Sheng joyfully exclaimed in his thoughts, "Finally, in this life, I have reached Grandmaster level 8. Immediately, Lu Sheng took out the academic books, smiled, reached for them, and noted, "The level 4 limit allows for the acquisition of the next 3 major techniques of level 11. Lu Sheng focused on their indicator board. The third Dharma Sphere of Vision Glass. Natural breathing method continuously improves physical technique. Immortal Golden Body's second level method. Finally, Lu Sheng swiftly opened the technique book. Inside appeared a red energy sphere. Lu Sheng silently assessed in his heart. The refined body technique of level 4 authority encompasses all training stages from level 4 to level 6. Then, Lu Sheng confirmed further. It is equivalent to a direct path to mastering. Immediately, Lu Sheng's body quickly absorbed the surging energy from within the book, his eyes wide open as he shouted internally. This technique not only provided the second stage training movements of the immortal golden body, Lu Sheng thought, but also added a special cultivation method. Lu Sheng confidently walked towards the blazing red orb ahead, with multicolored streams of energy beneath his feet. Moments later, he returned to reality and gazed at the book in its ethereal form before him, pursing his lips as he muttered, Fortunately, Shang Ning was a die-hard fan of Wang Hang. Lu Sheng reminded himself, recalling the times to get pursued as an idol. The two could be said to have a direct lineage, making it easy for him to connect seamlessly. Soon after, Lu Sheng remembered the blue energy of the master shining on the path ahead and voiced his affirmation that his master's will had already formed. As long as he relied on it to upgrade his blood value, he could successfully reach the master pinnacle. Lu Sheng thought, yet he still stood at the foot of the stairs looking up at them. Finally, Lu Sheng reflected further. He thought of the 10 suns shine at the same time technique that Shang Ning had created. His master's path. Lu Sheng paused for a moment, then recalled the master path with the phoenix gems flying around and another person using purple lightning to provide additional insight. An 11th level expert, Wang Ha's master path was acclaimed to be the undefined world of the future, 10,000 years from now. Lu Sheng, puzzled, voiced his thoughts. Are the masters of the two of them of the same level? Immediately after, he self-rejected, his expression serious. Probably not at all the same. Lu Sheng's expression darkened. He looked down at the scripture before him and concluded, that is their path. Lu Sheng paused, then imagined the image of the great Tao in the infinite space. He raised his head, looked at the undefined book before him and affirmed, not my path. Lu Sheng envisioned himself running on a separate staircase, different from Wang Ha's path. Lu Sheng's expression became serious as he continued to assert, the master level Tao I want to pursue has to rely on Wang Ha, but I must surpass Wang Ha. Finally, Lu Sheng added his own conclusion. My initial goal is to achieve level 30 proficiency or even higher. Only then can I accomplish things that even Wang Ha cannot. Lu Sheng further confirmed, I have 3 major level 11 techniques as my foundation. Recalling the tower and the people below, Lu Sheng spoke. The entire magnificent martial civilization of 10,000 years in the future has paved the way for me. Filled with determination, Lu Sheng shouted, this is not an illusion, nor is it underestimating myself. Lu Sheng extended his hand, standing at the pinnacle of life. The sunlight shone on Lu Sheng, illuminating his face. With his hand raised high, he smiled with enthusiasm, his eyes filled with determination, and shouted, that is my future. At Lu Sheng's home, 5 days after the competitive exam ended, Lindsay was sitting on a ladder hanging lanterns. Lu King stood below, holding a lantern and lifting it up for his father. Next to them, a pile of red lanterns and red paper was scattered everywhere. Lin Zhe from the ladder was hanging lanterns while smiling brightly and said, hey, Xiao Sheng's results will be out soon. He added, we must celebrate properly. Below, Lu King looked up at his father, smiling widely while holding the lantern. In the neighboring house, a man with green hair was adjusting his outfit. Through the window, he looked at Lu Sheng and his son, then spoke. The neighbors are hanging lanterns and setting off firecrackers. He added, it seems there's some good news. Meanwhile, Lu Sheng's ex-wife, wearing earrings, closed her eyes, frowned, and replied irritably, ha, good news. She further remarked sarcastically, ever since they came here, there's been no good news at all. She raised her eyebrows, gritted her teeth, and looked towards the group hanging lanterns, commenting, the housing prices here really are too cheap. Even the lowly and poor can buy a place here. Finally, she disdainfully tossed her hair and added, look at their pathetic appearance. When they first moved in, they were constantly noisy, disturbing the neighbors. She recalled encountering them earlier that morning at the front door. As she got into the car, she caught sight of Lindsay picking up fruit that had fallen on the ground. She felt embarrassed, covered her mouth, and frowned in disgust. Then she yelled at her husband. The bag for the oranges is ripped in the street, taking forever in the middle of the road. I wonder if they dirtied my car. In the end, she grimaced and concluded, just thinking about it makes me feel disgusted.